Right now on the National Weather Desk, we're looking back on hurricane season and ahead to what could still be in our future.
Keeping an eye on the Caribbean, could this be Patty?
Nearly 1 month after Hurricane Helene struck North Carolina, many survivors are still living in tents.
And it's almost like we were forgotten for several days.
We recently reached the solar max. Does that mean the sun's peak activity is coming to an end?
The sun's going to remain highly active for at least another year.
Drought in northern Michigan is taking a toll on local lakes.
We need to have a good snowpack this winter.
And not all honey is the same. Why some bees in North Carolina are producing honey that tastes like a popular soda.
If this brings a little joy to the world, then so be it.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Well, good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Emma Withrow. All is fairly calm in the tropical Atlantic right now after a series of storms and hurricanes in recent weeks. Nothing significant brewing now, and it's expected to remain this way in the coming days. Meteorologist Chris Sukin takes a look at hurricane season so far.
Hi, meteorologist Chris Suchan with a look at the Atlantic hurricane season so far. We're at 15 named storms, just a little bit above where we would typically be in an average season. Of course, it has been above average on the number of hurricanes and major hurricanes, Beryl, Debbie, Francine, Helene, and Milton, all the big storms of the season so far with a huge impact. Moving forward, the occurrence of storms, climatologically speaking, across the Atlantic decreasing as the waters cool, increased wind shear, the seasons change with the westerlies dropping across the basin. That's the way it looks in September, which is the peak of the hurricane season. You see the occurrence of storms does really decrease quite a bit in October, the Caribbean, around Florida, the parts of the Atlantic, and then even more so into November as the waters are really cooling off with wind shears. So right now, all is quiet across the tropical Atlantic. That was once Oscar, moving away to the northeast. Down the road with some interest in the 7 to 12 day time frame, keeping an eye on the Caribbean. Could this be Patty that would be perhaps developing in the long-range forecast heading into the early days of November? We'll stand by on that. A lot of time to watch, but that's where we stand so far in the Atlantic hurricane season.
After Helene wiped out countless homes, some folks are grateful and are getting by with donations and the goodwill of community members until they regain their footing. But the weather's cooling off, so options are in the works right now to make sure residents can stay warm during the winter. Rex Hodge reports.
And the water went from here, and it rushed around that way and went straight out across the Old Clyde Road.
Annette Surratt had lived in a trailer on Birchwood Circle near the Pigeon River, but Helene flooded the community.
Fire department was down here yelling for people to get out. It was kind of horrifying.
She had evacuated before the worst of it, but could see her home from an adjacent parking lot bobbing. Then the water taking her trailer on an unintended trip.
It wrapped around the tree. It snapped in half, and the rest of it went down the river, and the roof is down in the bamboo patch.
Everything was gone.
I was devastated.
Her home gone, and what to do?
And it's almost like we were forgotten for several days. A nice military couple put a tent up for me.
They've popped up all around, and just recently, Surratt says, Crabtree Baptist Church brought her a pop-up camper.
I am using a generator that one of the churches donated. I've been using little propane heaters.
So you see yourself staying here through the winter?
I hope not, but, you know, if I have to.
Survival stories from Milton and Helene seem to have a lot of things in common. Karen Zatlax spoke to a woman whose home collapsed around her during Helene's flood and fury.
It sounded like all hell broke loose. I mean, the whole house, I was just watching it, and I knew I was going to die.
It's hard for Paula Masters to look at these photos.
It had taken the roof and the door and everything off.
They show her beloved home in Batcave in a twisted heap.
I don't know how to describe it. And I said, I know I'll never build there again. I said, you know.
It's also hard for her to understand how she survived. The house now sits many feet from its foundation, backwards and split in two, the roof on the ground. She remembers the moment that somehow saved her.
When that water started rushing in, you know, you always go to the highest point. And something stopped me. And if God hadn't stopped me, I would have been in there, and there's no way I would have lived.
For hours, she was stuck. as the floodwaters from Helene reached up to her neck.
I made it to the end of the hallway and just said, please put me in a safe place. God, give me a safe spot. And the doorknob and against that door, and that log raised that floor up like this and gave me, where I was really leaning back, and that water came rushing through. And
just before dark, she was finally able to crawl out to safety. She lightens up as she explains the reason she believes she made it.
I said, God takes care. I always heard God takes care of old folks and fools, and I qualified as both because I stayed in that house.
Recently, we reached the peak of the 11-year solar cycle. It's known as the solar max. Meteorologist Alex Garcia explains what the solar max is and what it could mean for us down here on Earth.
Every 11 years, the sun completes a solar cycle. We know this because the sun's magnetic poles, they flip, and the number of sunspots starts to increase on the surface of the sun. And that means that the sun's surface is becoming stormy. Those sunspots, they're also regions of very intense magnetic fields. Those magnetic fields are so strong that they don't let light coming from the center of the sun reach the surface, which is why we see them as little dark spots on the surface. Those areas are also intense magnetic fields that are launching pads for solar flares and coronal mass ejections that fire the charged particles toward the Earth. Now, this past May, the sun unleashed a series of flares and CMEs, creating the strongest geomagnetic storm that has been launched toward the Earth in the last 20 years. That storm ignited one of the most dazzling displays of the aurora borealis ever. And you could see it as far south as right here in San Antonio. Now, while the solar maximum creates spectacular displays, it also brings risks to our communications, our electrical grids, and to satellites that orbit the Earth. The sun's going to remain highly active for at least another year. So there'll be a lot more opportunities to see the dazzling aurora, but also risks to our technology. Scientists will monitor that solar cycle really close. And if you want to follow, all you have to do is go to a website called spaceweather.gov.
Are you having a hard time trying to pick your outfits these days? Well, meteorologist Brandon Stover explains why those choices are so tricky during these fall months.
Well, you've probably noticed, but it's getting harder to dress this time of the year. We're seeing two seasons in one. So what is happening here? During the mornings, you need a jacket, you need long pants, maybe even gloves, maybe even a tall, hot cup of joe. Meanwhile, in the afternoon, you need shorts and a t-shirt, and you need sunglasses. So literally two seasons in one. It all goes back to a high-pressure system. These high-pressure systems this time of the year tend to be large and they tend to be strong. And that's what's driving these differences from morning to afternoon. So clear skies, light wind, dry air. That's what you get underneath one of these very large high pressure systems. And those same conditions hit differently depending upon whether it's day or night. If it's during the day, those conditions lead to warm temperatures. You could be talking about 75 to 80 degrees in the afternoon without the humidity, of course, so that's kind of a pleasant warmth. Meanwhile, at night, with the nights getting longer, those same conditions, especially the dry air, allows that temperature to fall off drastically. So kind of a desert effect here, given those dry conditions. Your daily ranges from morning to afternoon could be as steep as 40 to 50 degrees. So it is that time of the year where it is hard to dress, and probably not going to see much change with that until we get later in the fall into the winter season.
And for more weather content, be sure to check us out on social media. We post all the latest weather headlines, plus some great video and information from our team of meteorologists across the country. You can also find us on all your favorite social media platforms. Those include Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X, and TikTok. Just search the National Weather Desk or scan that QR code on the bottom left corner of your screen. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll tell you about an invasive beetle taking over the homes in Maine. Plus, we'll check on this year's wine grape crop that's happening in Oregon.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with Look at the Northeast. Another seasonably mild day is on tap in the Northeast today. Most areas will top out in the 60s. The exception, parts of New York from the Adirondacks points west, you'll probably stay in the 50s. We just missed out on a storm. Look at that. A few hundred miles to our east is a pretty sizable storm out in the ocean. There's that developing sun today. That's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll have full sunshine returning on Friday. It's a great day to end out the work week, and temps look more seasonable in the 50s.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the mid-Atlantic region. A cold front passed through overnight. Now we're getting the breezier conditions around, and it will be much cooler for your afternoon, although lots of sunshine. Next front arrives on Friday night, and even this one doesn't look like it will produce any precipitation. If so, it will be very, very little, but our temperatures will take a dive. Highs only in the 60s for your Thursday, 50s in the mountains, but we'll be a little bit warmer as we head into Friday. Highs in the 60s in the upper altitudes.
I'm meteorologist Venus Reed. Here's a look at your highs for the day. We're looking at 78 in Nashville, 85 Birmingham, 86 in Macon, down towards West Palm about 83 degrees. We have high pressure over the southeastern United States, looking at pretty comfortable conditions. A few spotty showers in South Florida. Little cold front will start to move down over the Midwest. That will arrive as we get into the later portions of the week and the weekend. And it looks like we'll still see high pressure following that, giving us more clear conditions for the southeast over parts of the weekend.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
A beautiful find during a daily jog. This tree gives different meaning to the words gold leaf, gilded by nature's change in the fall season. Another find, this one over Wisconsin skies Tuesday night. A moon halo formed when cirrus clouds refracted the light. And here's a snapshot of a ruddy, recent dawn near Green Bay.
For more content like this, follow the National Weather Desk on Instagram.
Lots of folks around Maine are buzzing right now over a pest that's invading homes. Now that the weather's turning colder, multicolored Asian lady beetles are looking for places to stay warm. Meteorologist Ryan Munn has more.
As the weather turns colder, multicolored Asian lady beetles are searching for warmer areas like your home.
They're outside all year long. They're feeding on aphids and other small insects. But as temperatures start to get cold, they're going to seek warmer climates. So they're going to be attracted to the lights to your house, and they're going to feel that heat coming out of your soffits, your eaves, your overhangs of your house.
While they may look like ladybugs, there are some characteristics that separate them.
They are slightly larger than a traditional ladybug, a lot of the same characteristics. One of the identification keys that we go off is that they have a distinct white head with a M marking on them.
Cash says they're traditionally orange and red and a little longer in length than a typical ladybug. And if you see these beetles in your home, it's important to speak with a pest control expert.
In some situations, there may be treatments that will be recommended, and depending on the severity of the population, sometimes using things like vacuums if they're inside your home, just to remove the population.
Cash also says that when they land on you, it can lead to a rash.
When we think about them biting, they don't have teeth, but what they do is they have razor-sharp mouth parts that actually scrape your skin. They land on you, they're looking for a moisture content, so they're just scraping along the skin, and that skin has the opportunity to become irritated and also could lead to a rash.
It is always recommended if you do get bit by one of these beetles to consult with your doctor.
Multiple heat waves hit Portland, Oregon this summer, prompting the opening of cooling shelters and an increasing fire danger. But the heat also had an impact on local wine grape growers. Meteorologist Allison Gutlieber has more.
With no extreme drought conditions this year, Stoller Wine Group's Jason Toch says he was not too worried about the extreme heat in the beginning of the summer.
Timing was bearable, and the reason why is because earlier in June, that's when we have flowering. There's still a lot of uptake of water from the ground through the vine that's keeping the vine pretty well hydrated at that time.
But having extremely hot days towards the end of the summer becomes risky to the wineries. This year, we saw the 90s at the end of August and the beginning of September.
We're very concerned about that, but luckily, groundwater being still available this year because of that rain, those rain events that we had in August. Really kind of helped save the crop from being completely sunburned.
He says the heat waves over the summer were nothing like the ones back in 2021.
Luckily, it wasn't back-to-back 114-degree events, and we hope we never see that again because that was crazy. But who's to say? We very much believe that climate change is real.
The U.S. Drought Monitor releases its latest updates later this morning, and last week's update showed moderate to severe drought conditions across northern Michigan. And it's not hard to see the water levels dropping at these local lakes. Daniel Zivian tells us what this means and what's needed this winter to help solve this issue.
For Lauren Dye at the tip of the Mitt watershed, the lower water levels are not the overarching concern. Rather, it's the fluctuation between extremities, caused in part, she says, by climate change.
What we're seeing is kind of a tug of war between precipitation and evaporation. So in the springtime is when we'll see a lot of runoff from spring melts and stuff. So we might see those water levels a little bit higher. In the summertime, when there's a lot of evaporation, we might see them drop a little bit. But typically by fall, those water levels we should see kind of increase. But this year has been an exceptionally dry fall. And so that's why we're seeing a dramatic difference this year from last year.
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is forecasting water levels 4 to 8 inches below last month, depending on the lake. Dye says the lower levels can make it hard to maneuver boats and help invasive reed plants expand their range along coasts.
So when we were having those high water levels back around 2019, one of the benefits of that is that it was keeping the invasive Phragmites basically drowned. And so we weren't seeing those huge spreads of Phragmites the way that we had in the past.
Tim Spolinsky, a DNR fisheries supervisor, says he's worried about the next few months. Another weak winter would mean less of a snowpack, a detriment to inland streams and lakes.
Some people might not like to hear this, but we need to have a good snowpack this winter, not only for recreation sports, but for recharging our groundwater aquifers so that our streams can make it next summer. What we don't need, again, is extreme events. We don't need no water in the spring, no rain, no precipitation, then all of a sudden get flood-like events. That's what hurts our stream environments, our fish populations.
Honey can have a different taste depending on what type of flowers bees are feeding off of. One man in North Carolina has found a way to make the bees produce honey that tastes like a popular soda, and Brian North shows us how he does it.
This dark brown honey made by bees in Craven County has people buzzing.
I don't know, but it'd be really good on a biscuit.
So how did this all come about?
We own all of the newspapers from the Sun Journal from around 1899 to 1986.
Pepsi enthusiast Jerry Avery was doing some research, and he noticed a small blurb.
In July of 1905.
About bees getting into Caleb Bradham's new Pepsi bottling plant.
And getting into the syrup vat, and then going back and making honey with that. It actually tasted like Pepsi Cola. They did an article on it, and they talked about how good it tasted.
And when Jerry rediscovered this article, he was inspired to try and recreate the phenomenon.
We took a hive of bees, gave them Pepsi syrup to feed off of. We were able to recreate what had happened in 1905.
It takes about 16 weeks for the bees to do their work.
My concern was for the bees.
And Jerry wants to make sure the insects don't get diabetes.
They're taking the syrup, but when they're done with it, I think they've actually made it healthier.
But Jerry says don't expect it to taste exactly like a freshly poured Pepsi.
Definitely tastes like honey.
It has a very heavy, very dense flavor. When you first put it on your tongue, it tastes like honey. But about 10 or 15 seconds in, you can really taste the cola.
Yeah, definitely Pepsi aftertaste.
I like to see people laugh. If this brings a little joy to the world, then so be it.
Even if it's not a 100% taste success rate.
It's got a weird taste to it. I'm sorry.
Jerry thinks more people will be up to the challenge.
Well, we won one in the past. I don't see why we couldn't do it again.
And as we head into the break, let's take a look at the fall colors around northern Michigan's Lake Anne.
Well, good morning. I'm meteorologist Phil Kelly. A cold front sliding through the upper Midwest and Central Plains going to bring some rain from Minneapolis down to Kansas City. Dry in the Ohio Valley, but as that cold front moves a little bit closer on Friday, some scattered rain into the Great Lakes. I think what you're going to notice as we get into the weekend, temperatures really where we should be this time of year, into the upper 50s and low 60s.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. The best cool spot in the morning, sitting up here in Amarillo at 55 degrees. Pretty warm and humid. You get down to Brownsville at around 72 degrees. We've got a little weak front kind of trying to make it down to Texas and into Oklahoma. Won't do much. It might bring slight cooling at best. Some scattered showers right up along the coast. Otherwise, it's going to feel like another summer day. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look. That's your regional weather.
Well, hi there, everybody, and a good Thursday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Out west, we've had some stormy weather of late, but things are calming down again in the Pacific Northwest, including out of Boise and Bend with highs in the 50s there east of the Cascade Crest. Look at that perfect 73 out of LA and 72 out of Denver. Current weather maker, this area of low pressure bringing some scattered showers to the Rockies of Colorado. Gets wet again this weekend around Seattle and Portland. And that's the scene from here.
Yellowstone National Park is probably the best known of all the national parks. Brianna Carroll shows us the work conservationists at the park are doing to keep it healthy, safe, and beautiful.
During peak season, the park sees thousands of visitors each day. And when it comes to preservation and protection, Uberagua says the two biggest threats facing Yellowstone right now are climate change and a growing human footprint.
It takes a whole lot of thoughtful, caring people to address those threats.
She says it also takes collaboration among community partners to work towards solutions, like increased resources to ensure housing and good wages for essential workers. To help address those needs, Free Reign Coffee donated $25,000 to the National Parks Conservation Association at Monday's event.
It's really important to us as a company to recognize the people who make our parks so special. Yellowstone is one of our country's national treasures, and it's one of the most spectacular, breathtaking places on Earth.
And people continuing to care both about and for the park will be essential to keeping it that way in the future.
thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Emma Withrow. Make it a great Thursday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.